Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger around the OAA, the host of Last Week Brain Cells, and the host between Taormina's and Orion I'd like to welcome those watching on the local voice on SoundCloud and those watching Orion A lot to talk about here this week here on the podcast. Here, of course, we're into baseball season. New coach at Seaholm. We're going to break that down. Also, we're going to talk about the new boys basketball coach over at Waterford Kettering, where that is a big deal. I mean, like, especially when you look at, of course, the changeover, especially with what's been going on at Waterford Kettering. So let's look at our big story here. Obviously, let's do our first story here. Of course, I posted this on the blog earlier on Tuesday here. Seaholm's got a new baseball coach. Steve Olinsky takes over as the new coach, taking over for John Top. Of course, he stepped down after 9 years coaching the program. Of course, Seaholm was 50-16 in the last 2 years under Top. And they go in a different direction. So it'll be interesting to see how Seaholm responds to this hire. It would be very interesting to see how things will go with Seaholm. I mean, obviously, you look at the Maples, and you think about the success they've had the last 2 years, the way that they've been playing. I mean, they really have been they've been good all year. I mean, they've been really good the last 2 years, just really finding ways for success. And I think, you look at it now with Seaholm, I think it's going to be very interesting coming into the year, especially when you look at baseball, where they stand. I mean, so it'd be interesting to see how the coaching transition is going to have to happen during the season. And, and it's going to be a different process. I mean, like, it's, you look at when it comes to coaching, situations, it's going to be very different. And, obviously you look at the success that Seaholm's had, and, you look at the success they've had. I mean, really, it just comes down to is can Seaholm sustain the success that they've had with Oshinsky, taking over for Toss. So that's going to be the question mark for Seaholm is, will they be able to overcome? I mean, and Seaholm's biggest problem had been the Catholic League. I mean, obviously, you look at what the Catholic League has done. Last year, 2 years ago, was University of Detroit Jesuit got them in the regional semifinals. And then last year was Birmingham Broiler Rice who got Seaholm. So that's going to be the challenge for Seaholm. And I think what also helps Seaholm is they got that new facility there where they have lights where they can play games at night. So that will help things for them going forward. So, and I think that was one of the biggest attractions is having that new field and having that new facility, helping that will attract coaches to come to your school, and that will help things. As I talked about in my interview with Coach Seaholm football coach Jim Dewald, what we talked about was, how that how the facilities in a school district will help bring in top-notch coaches. And you kind of look at it now as, you look at what Seaholm now is, they had the facilities, which is a big deal, but now you bring in a guy he's going to have something to prove, obviously. I mean, like, going to have really something to prove. And I think, when you look at the ranks of baseball, you always think about with baseball, you start off with the perennial powers. I mean, Seaholm's going to have to, eventually they're going to see their arch rival Groves. They're going to see West Bloomfield. They're going to have to deal with some powerhouses like Adams, Oxford, Lake Orion. Of course, Lake Orion's ranked in the state to start the year. They're at number 10 in the So when I look at, and then Rochester, obviously Rochester's been a team, they got a lot of experience coming back. So Seattle's going to have some challenges at them. They're going to really have some challenges, and the question is, can they overcome it? And that's going to be the key for them going forward. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we're going to really see what happens, especially when you look at a team like Seaholm. When you look at in the baseball world, kind of really, starting that journey, you know what I mean? Obviously, a lot of these teams are coming back from spring break, particularly you look at several teams that went out of state to scrimmage. I know the MHA does allow that with it, but it's very specific guidelines. Um, especially when you look at what the MHA has. So it'll be interesting to see how Seaholm matches up with the upper echelon of the OAA. Can they sustain success? That's really going to be the big question when I look at Seaholm with their new coach coming into the year. Is can they sustain success? If they do, I think this could be a very good team. Do I think are they at the level of anybody in the red? Probably not. But you never know. You really never know when you look at baseball. Baseball, softball, obviously both are really, really weird games. They're really, really weird games. You don't know who's gonna be good. You don't know who's gonna be. Sometimes you look at with those type of sports that they totally surprise the media, and you look at obviously a team can make a big run, and I think that could be the case here. Could Seaholm be that team that surprises people? I mean, you never know. I mean, you really never know. I mean, you kind of look at it with baseball, obviously softball. We talk about Lake Orion, obviously. I think Lake Orion can be very good again this year. Stony Creek's another team to really watch for. But with Seaholm, I think it's just gonna go. They're gonna go through a transition period, and unfortunately for them, they're gonna have it happen during the season. And I think that's gonna be the challenge for them going forward. Is can Seaholm overcome the transition period, considering it's going to be a really, really interesting challenge for them, especially with the success they've had in the past. And that's going to be the question for Seaholm is can they sustain success? And that's the big, big question mark going forward. So my thoughts on the hire, I'm very curious to see how Seaholm will handle this. I'm very curious to see how they're going to adjust to this. I mean, there's going to be a lot of question marks when I look at Seaholm in baseball this year. There's a lot of question marks, and that's something that to really keep an eye on as we head forward into the regular season. So, as we start league play this week, and we're going to see what happens. I mean, obviously, a lot of questions. Obviously, Ken Seaholm, you know what I mean? Obviously, they have that rivalry with Groves. They have Bloomfield Hills there, the West Bloomfields there. Their district, I think, is going to be very tough again. I think Birmingham Brother Rice is in there, which that's going to be really difficult. And obviously, we know how good Birmingham Brother Rice is in baseball. One of the perennial powers in the Catholic League. Also, Orchard Lake St. Mary's is in there in the Catholic League as well. So a lot of challenges do await Seaholm. Obviously, going to go through a complete transition period. It's going to have to happen for them during the season. So, for Seaholm, it'll be interesting to see how things go for them. And I think it'll be something to really, really keep an eye on as we head into the beginning of spring sports and beginning of baseball season. So that's one of the big stories here is Seaholm having a new baseball coach. Excuse me here, on Steve Oshinsky taking over the program. So it'd be interesting to see how he would adjust to life in the to life at Seahome. So we'll see what happens. Let's go now from from baseball to back to the winter game. We're talking boys basketball here. Future member of the conference coming in Waterford Kettering. Just hired a new boys basketball coach, and a lot of people look at this and they view it as a game changer. They just named Rex Walters the new boys basketball coach. Of course, he takes over for Steve Emmert. Kettering, of course, it's been a program that's been really, really rough. I mean, really challenging. And I think when you look at the challenge, you kind of look at what Waterford Kettering is, the challenge that Rex Walters is stepping into. This is going to be, I think, one of the most difficult jobs that he's going to go into because of the history of Waterford Kettering basketball, just the perception of Waterford Kettering in boys basketball. And it's not been pretty. It really has not been pretty for the captains. It really has not. I mean, when they were in the Lakes Valley, it was not good. I mean, Kettering, we know, has got a history of not being stable. Even have not been stable. Even when Coach Steve Emmert came in there, the program, he went in his 4 years at Waterford Kettering. He was 9-81. And then 2-44 the last 2 years. So that kind of tells you something right there. And obviously you look at with Waterford Kettering, what has been the issue with this program? And is it the competition in Lakes Valley? You look at teams like Milford, Lakeland, you look at South Lyon East, and then the Three Walled Lakes, obviously Walled Lake Central being the beneficiary, of what's going on with Walled Lake. But you look at the school down the road for Kettering, and that is Waterford Mott, who is another school that's also going to likely be in the OAA this winter. And they're going to be in the OAA this winter. So when you look at the success that Jeff Jason has done at Waterford Mott, and then you put it to Kettering, it's not been, you look at what Coach Jeff Jason's done at Waterford Mott, and, but then you got to look at the past with Waterford Mott. I mean, you got to look at what's they've been doing. And, Mott, as they've struggled early on, and then they got very good. That's the previous staff at Mott before Jeff Jason came back, and Jeff Jason's turned Waterford Mott he's turned her into a juggernaut. He really has. And you look at the job that he's done there, and you think about it and say, okay, where am I going to go? You know what I mean? Like, you look at the Waterford School District, I'm not sure if it's open enrollment over there or if it's closed enrollment over there at Waterford. You kind of look at, the geographical stance of Waterford. Obviously, you got Waterford Mott's off of Scott Lake Road. Waterford Kettering's off Airport Road. Of course, Waterford Kettering is right next to Pierce Middle School, over on Airport Road. So when you look at this, you look at Waterford Kettering, you kind of look at the struggles that they've had. You look at football, you look at basketball. It's been a struggle. And I think with Waterford Kettering, Coach Brian Barnes was in his first year coaching the program. And he almost got that team into the playoffs despite a losing record. They were the last team out in D3. So that's a credit Coach Brian Barnes. Of course, we're going to have Coach Barnes on the podcast this summer, talking Kettering football, even though Waterford Kettering is going to be in the Lakes Valley for their final year, them and Waterford Mott are both going to be in the Lakes Valley for the final year. So you kind of look at, I'm trying to paint the picture here of Waterford Kettering in both football and boys basketball. And you look at boys basketball with the hire of Rex Walters, that's a big deal. That is a huge deal. And you look at the team Kettering had, despite the fact they went 1-21 this year, they were absolutely shellacked by Lake Orion in the first round of the district. Now, albeit Lake Orion, obviously, didn't deserve to be a number 4 seed. I mean, don't get me wrong, that district with Waterford, Mott, Avondale, Clarkson, Lake Orion, that was going to be brutal for Waterford Kettering. That was going to be brutal. So you look at Waterford Kettering. Obviously, they made the change. They made a big change at athletic director. Obviously, bringing in Shane Hines. Of course, we know how good Shane Hines has been, a Clarkson alum, and he's been very good at Troy before taking the Waterford Kettering job. And he has done a masterful job with Kettering. He has done a really good job with them. I give him props. I give also credit to the Waterford District AD, Allison Sartoris. She's done a really good job with the athletic department district-wide at Waterford. Also, Principal Ben Harwood done a really good job at Waterford Kettering. And you look at, and Walter said on Twitter, on X, he wrote a big thank you to Shane Hines, Principal Ben Harwood, and Waterford District AD Allison Sartoris, and the search committee for the opportunity to work with these young men at Waterford Kettering. Excited to get to work and get back on the basketball court. So that tells you something right there. That tells you something. Obviously, you look at the pedigree of Walters, and you look at the pedigree. I've seen him. I've met him. Great guy to meet. But you look at the job that he's got ahead of him is going to be very difficult, because you're bringing a new team, new players, into a new conference. That's the challenge he's going to bring. He's going to have to deal with. I know he brings a lot of basketball knowledge. Played at Northwestern, played at Kansas, played in the NBA for 10 years with 3 different teams. The Miami Heat, the New Jersey Nets, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Coached the G League for the Detroit Pistons in Grand Rapids. He was an assistant with the New Orleans Pelicans and was an assistant in college game at Nevada and Wake Forest. He was also the acting head coach, interim head coach for a time at Florida Atlantic and San Francisco. Both San Francisco, obviously, in the West Coast Conference. I think he was the coach of the year in that conference. That was according to MI Prep Zone's Matt Maury. So you look at what Walters has. You kind of look at the pieces he's got. You look, and it starts and ends with Jordan Jarrell. It starts and ends with him. Jordan Jarrell is a playmaker who I think could make some noise this year. I really think next year could be his year. He could make some noise in this conference. He could really make some noise. They got others too. I mean, Gustis Jabrinas, he's another solid player. Hayne Bigelow, Brayson Harrington, Dylan Hamill, Josh Wagner, Jesse Reddick, Bryce Land, Jake Burzek, and Kanem Jallo all coming back. So there's a lot of experience coming back with Kettering. There really is a lot of experience with Waterford Kettering coming back. That'll help things. The problem that Kettering has is they have to change a culture around. They have to change a culture where they have seen that losing is acceptable. And I think, and that's going to be the challenge that Walters faces, is can he be the guy that fixes the culture at Kettering? Because for far too long, Waterford Kettering's been a team that's been kicked on. They've been down in the dumps. And, they've really struggled, especially in the Lakes Valley. Now you look at a team like Waterford Mott, who's right next door. They shared the Lakes Valley title last year, the last few years. And yes, Waterford Mott loses some. They loses a lot of talent. But, they still have Jeb Jason there. That's going to be interesting to see how Waterford Mott responds to being in the OA. For Kettering, I think it's more dire. It was more dire. Despite the experience, it's that mantra losing culture has been the problem. And you look at teams that have had some really tough rebuilds in the past. You look at Jared Thomas when he took over at Adams. Adams was in really bad shape when he got there. They were in just complete terrible shape. They were down to two programs. They didn't have a freshman program. But look what Jared Thomas did at Adams. And yes, I know he's no longer at Adams, but you look at the turnaround that he did there. He got Adams back into the juggernaut of basketball. He got them in there. And that's a big credit. He turned that program around. And Isaiah Novak, taking over there, he's done a good job keeping it stable. He's done a really good job. But I think when you look at the rebuild that Kettering's going to have to go through, it's going to be difficult. And as difficult that rebuild was at Adams for Jared, I think Rex is going to have a lot more difficult time with this rebuild because he's going to have to change a culture. Now, what Jared did was, you look at what he did was, I noticed something during the summer when Jared took over at Adams. The kids were excited, energized to play for him, and he did a very good job keeping the kids focused, keeping the kids' mental mindset, stable, and he did a really good job getting Adams back to, despite the record, he set the foundation for that program for years to come. I think Rex can definitely do that here with Waterford Kettering. But they got so much changeover. The kids, they need somebody in there that can bring stability to this program. They don't need a coach that can be there for about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They need a coach in there that can be in there at least 7, 8 years, maybe 9 years. For a long time. They need stability in that program. They need stability. And the fact that you're going to be in a conference with some of the premier juggernauts of the OAA and perennial powers, and we're not even talking division yet. We're not even talking districts yet. That's coming in June. But if they're in a district that was similar to that this year, I don't know if Kettering would have stood a chance in that district anyway. Considering you had to deal with Clarkston. Yes, Clarkston was up and down this year. Avondale, we know, has been very good as a program. Jared Thomas taking over that program. And he really turned that program around quick. Then you have Lake Orion in there. You look at the job that Coach Jose Andradas has done, with the Dragons. And then obviously your neighbors in Waterford Mott. So there's going to be a challenging trend here that Rex is going to have to correct. And does it happen early? I don't think it does, but it could. Because for Kettering, there's nowhere to go but up with this program. There's nowhere to go but up. I mean, yes, I hear the fact that it's a big home run hire. It's a big hire. Obviously, the playing experience, coaching in college. But it's different coaching college ball and pro ball in the high school game. Remember, there's no shot clock. So it'll be interesting to see. I will be very curious to see how Rex turns this thing around there. I'll be curious to see how he schedules, especially early. Well, he's got a veteran team, but the problem is with this veteran team is that they don't have a lot of success. They don't have a lot of success. I mean, the last 2 years they ran to Lake Orion. But that's going to be the key for Waterford Kettering is this is a team that needs to win games. They have to win games. And for them going into the OAA, do you put Kettering in a division where they start up, if the OAA hypothetically goes different divisions, if they go to a 4-division set, do you put Kettering in the gold? Do you put them in the blue? I mean, they certainly don't match up in the white or red. But that's the question that, for Kettering is, how is this team going to look this winter? How are they going to look in their first time in the league, back in the league? Remember, let's not forget, they left the league in 2008 for the KVC, and then they went to Lakes Valley. For the KVC, and then they went to Lakes Valley. Or the KLA, then the Lakes Valley. So, it's very interesting to see how this team's going to do. And then you look at, in the case of Rex, obviously Rex. We know the famous history with the family. Gunnar, of course, played at Adams his freshman year and his senior year. And then, obviously, Ace Walters playing at Clarkston. I don't know what's going to happen with Ace if he transfers over to play with his dad or if he stays at Clarkston. I mean, there's a lot of questions there with that decision. But when I look at Kettering, Kettering, it's a difficult job. It is a very, very difficult job because of the lack of success that the program has had. I give athletic director Shane Hines a lot of credit here for going outside the box and making this big hire here. I give him a ton of credit. But when you look at Kettering, this is a team that needs wins. They need competence. They need stability. That is the things that hopefully, that Rex gives this program because of the lack of success that they've had. I mean, you look at the coaches they've had. I mean, Stepan Wilson, Michael Merrick. You look at, obviously Steve Emmert. It's just, you look at the stability of that program, it really has not been there. Really has not been there in a long time. It really hasn't. And you look at with Waterford Kettering is, can this team find it again? Can they find the success they've had in the past? If they do, under Rex, then I think this team can be very, very good. Now, Rex is going to have to find some assistance, obviously. And obviously that's going to be the big question mark is he's going to have to, I think for him, he's going to have to really look at the middle school programs. Pierce especially, because that's where Kettering's feeder school is. Mason could be a possible option. Even though most of their kids go to Waterford Mott, but that could be an option for him to look at. Is maybe you got to look at the middle school ranks. You got to look at, okay, what kids, obviously, because I'm not sure what the Waterford School District is, if they're open enrollment in the middle schools or not. I'm not sure about that. But that might be the first step to look if you want to truly rebuild a program. Is, the open enrollment within the school district. But I think you got to look at within your school. Because if you're looking within your school, there's athletes at Waterford Kettering. There's athletes there. You couldn't, I know a lot of coaches encourage kids to play multi-sport. I know Waterford Kettering's got several kids who play multi-sport, maybe even triple sport. And that's going to help you. That'll help in the future. That'll help. So the big case here for Rex, the challenge for him is going to be is this. Culture. Can he install a culture to where this team and this program can be successful? That is the first step. This program needs to get wins in the worst way possible because of the struggles that they've had in the past. They have to get wins. The second one, obviously you want to turn around that rivalry of Waterford Mott. You obviously want to turn that around. And it's not been very pleasant on Kettering's side. It has not been pleasant against their arch rivals from Scott Lake Road. And I know that rivalry between Waterford Kettering and Waterford Mott. We know the Beef Bowl. We know they battle for like a sale. I think they battle for that. I'm not sure what it's called, but I know what it looks like. But I know they battle for a trophy for that in football. And I know Waterford Mott kept Waterford Kettering out of the playoffs last year in football. And I know that's got to bother the folks at Waterford Kettering. It's got to bother them. Because you look at Waterford Kettering, they really haven't had a lot of success in football. They haven't had a lot of success in basketball. Those are your two main sports. And then you look at, obviously, your girls' basketball program, you're merged with Mott. You're now Waterford. So, if you're Waterford Kettering, you're going to have to figure out, okay, if you're going to have to step your game up if you're a player, an athlete at Waterford Kettering. You're going to have to step up. Because I know the expectation that Coach Rex Walters wants to have over there. I know the expectation. The challenge is going to be very interesting. And how will he handle the schedule is the question. Because especially for a program that needs wins in the worst way possible. Does he lighten it up? Or, since he's a well-known name, does he toughen up the schedule and play these juggernauts, get destroyed by them? That's another dangerous thing for Rex is how do you handle your non-conference? That is going to be the question mark. Because, and that's another question that I have. How do you handle his non-conference? And do you play an easy schedule to give your kids confidence, or you just toughen it up and risk getting destroyed in every basketball game? That's the big question. That's the challenge that Walters faces. There's so many challenges that Walters faces with this Kettering program. There's gonna be the mental mindset challenge. There's gonna be the culture challenge. And can he change the culture at Waterford Kettering? Because the last few coaches, honestly, and I'm going to be really honest with you, really have not. And there were some struggles. There were some complete struggles. Does Rex have to tear down the program to rebuild the program? That is the big question that only he can answer. I don't think anybody else can answer that. So he's going to have some challenges ahead of him. The challenges that await him: new league, new conference, new era. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to be very excited about it. A lot of people are very excited about the hire. A lot of people are very excited about what he brings to Kettering. And obviously you look at the future at Kettering. The future's bright when you look at Kettering. Because now you have Rex Walters coaching the boys basketball program. You have Brian Barnes, who's going to be in his second year coaching football at Waterford Kettering. Now, yes, Barnes has got one more year in the Lakes Valley. When I look at that schedule, I think he can get maybe at least four wins for sure. When I look at that conference schedule, I mean, you can throw Wall Lake Western out the window. I don't think you're going to beat them. Lakeland, Milford could be tricky games for them. Then you can look at, South Lyon East. Both games look winnable, I think. Waterford Mott, the rivalry game on week 9 to close out the year. But then after that, you go into the OAA schedule for boys basketball, and you don't know who you're going to get. You know what I mean? We don't know what division they're going to be in. We don't know how this team's going to look. I mean, this could be a whole complete different Waterford Kettering team than everybody's been used to seeing in the past. And if that's the case, then Rex has done his job. He's done his job. I mean, like, really, that's going to be the case here. Is there's so many differences, so many different challenges that await him at Kettering. There's going to be, does he have the patience to turn around this program? Because this program is in desperate need of a complete turnaround. And who knows, if they shock everybody, win at least like 10, 11 games, that could happen. That could happen with this group. I mean, like, they got enough experience. They've been through the lowest of lows, and the highest of highs. But, they've been through the lowest of lows, and I think it might be time for them to get on an upward swing. And I think that will be huge for them if they can get that, if they can get to around 11 or 10, 11 wins this year. I think if they do, then that's going to be a big, big deal for Rex and his team. That's going to be a big, big deal. I mean, I think this rebuild is more than capable. I think it could be almost similar to that of what happened at Adams with Jared Thomas. But the question is, does he have the patience? And that's going to be the big question. And obviously, we know Athletic Director Shane Hines very well. We know, and I know him personally. When he was at Clarkston, when he was at Troy, even now at Waterford Kettering, this is a team that's going to have patience and have to take time to build. And, you look at this class here at Kettering, yes, they're a very young group, But, for some of them, you look at like Jordan Jarrell is going to be a senior next year. This is it. This is it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how things go. We'll see how things go with this hire. But like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how Rex handles this job at Waterford Kettering. Considering the history, considering the coming into the new league, it's going to be something to really keep an eye on. I think it'll be something to really look at. So, thoughts on this hire? Obviously, it's a big time hire. As I mentioned, I got concerns about it a little bit, especially with the culture there. Can Rex change the culture there? Can he build a winner at Waterford Kettering? Kettering is not an easy place to build a winner there. So we'll see what happens there. So, so Rex is gonna have his hands full there at Waterford Kettering. So we're gonna see what happens, and I think that'll be something to really, really keep an eye on as we head into the beginnings of the he's gonna have to go through the summer programs, obviously. See where they're at. Be curious to see how his summer conditioning program is going to be. Really curious to see how that goes. Considering the changeover to a new league, a lot of challenges await him over there at Waterford Kettering. So we'll see what happens with him. So we'll keep an eye on it, obviously. As of course the districts start coming around for basketball in June. So we got full-fledged season here in spring to worry about. Obviously, of course, I did release my top 24 for football. I posted on my blog at SagamBay4650 at blogspot.com. Did include Waterford Kettering and Waterford Mott. Both those two teams. So we'll see what happens there. But Rex at Waterford Kettering for boys basketball. This will be very interesting to see. And we'll see what happens. We're going to see what happens over there. So it'll be really interesting to see how this goes over there at Waterford Kettering. So, okay, now let's look at the rest of spring sports. We're going to talk baseball, softball. Obviously, you look at with track and field starting up this week. I think it started up, next week. It'll be interesting to see. Now, I think their meets are on Wednesdays, which I know this Wednesday doesn't look really good weather-wise. It really does not. When you look at chance, remember, we're in April here, and it's Michigan. So there could be snow on the ground still. And I know in northern lower Michigan, and my thoughts and prayers are up to the good folks up there in northern lower Michigan, especially north of around Gaylord North. Getting hit with that ice storm. I know in southeast Michigan here, we got hit with severe storms. And I know when I looked at the forecast, we could get more storms. A lot of heavy rain, maybe hail and tornadoes. And, it's very unusual at this time of year in April. Normally this type of stuff happens in, you look at in Michigan, usually average temperature around like 50 degrees. Really is. So you kind of think of it. You look at in northern lower in the UP, they don't start baseball, softball till about the mid part of May because there's so much snow on the ground. So that's what makes it really interesting when you look at the state from north to south here. And I think, you look at the weather situation there. And it's really hard for a baseball, softball athlete to play in the UP because of, the fact that you have snow, or in track and field, where, you're going to have to overcome and the weather conditions and basically handle throwing in snow or jumping in cold weather. It's difficult. It's really difficult. So So curious to see how, if any, competitions get underway on Wednesday. Really, really curious, especially when looking at the weather situation. The fact of the matter is that, I've been reading the weather forecasts and all that, and basically saying, like, maybe a mixture of snow, sleet, freezing rain up north, in the thumb area, and then you look at a potential of severe thunderstorms, possibly um, during the afternoon and at night. So it'll be interesting to see. But a lot of these school districts are going to have to deal with the weather. And, and I think Mother Nature this year has not been very kind to spring sports right now. Really hasn't. Now, to the defense of them is a lot of them's been on spring break. So you kind of look at it and you kind of think about it and say, okay, we just got off spring break. I know soccer's played some games before they go on break. So basically, it's how you handle it. It's how you handle it. So that's the big question mark I have when you look at the weather situation. Like, one day it could be really nice and warm, nice and 60 degrees or 70 degrees. Next moment, it could be snowy and about 30 degrees. So it kind of tells you something right there. Coach is going to have to deal with challenges. Athletic director's going to have to deal with some challenges when it comes to handling the weather. And you kind of look at with the weather situation, Mother Nature honestly flat out doesn't care at times. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Then you have to deal with, let's say if you have deal storm damage, or if, like, you got to deal. Look at what happened at Waterford. During football season, they had to play some of the games at Waterford Kettering because of wind damage. So Mother Nature really doesn't honestly care. And I think that's the unfortunate part. You know what I mean? So that's really what it is. So, Michigan in April, it's a really weird time. Really, really weird time. Because the changing of the seasons, the going from winter, spring to summer. There's so much challenges. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, it leads to cancellations and games not likely getting made up. Now, if it's a league game, it has to be made up. It has to be made up because you look at it. Not a lot of these schools have lights. Not a lot of these schools have days available, and that's a challenge on an athletic director. So that's a big challenge ahead of them. So that's a big challenge for them is, can they handle it? That's the big question we have. So there's a lot of questions when you look at the scenario, how it goes. Big, big challenges ahead of them. So, you think about it. You know what I mean? So, and that's why spring is a really difficult month, because of projection of weather. And really, that's what it is. It's not the opponent, not the game, because of the weather, because of Mother Nature. That's really how it goes. We had one year we had just like a hot summer, really, really hot summer. And it was insane. Temperatures were about 70, 80 degrees consistently. So there's a lot of these fields now are turf fields. So really, that's really what's going to be like. So a lot of challenges ahead. Really, a lot of challenges when you look at the spring. Weather is probably going to be one of the big ones. On track and field, you can play in rain. You can run in rain. It's just not thunder and lightning. I mean, baseball, softball, I think you can play in rain. I mean, even though it's not likely. Lacrosse, you can play in rain. Girls and boys lacrosse. Even soccer, you can play in rain. But, it all comes down to thunder and lightning. It really does. And then, especially those in UP and in northern lower Michigan, they're still dealing with cold weather up there. They're still dealing with that right now. So, a lot of challenges await. A lot of challenges await when it comes to the weather. It really comes down. So, I will be very curious to see if any games are played on Wednesday. Really curious. Because it looks like with Mother Nature, Mother Nature might win out here. And, and it could be it could be really interesting on Wednesday. It could be really interesting weather-wise. I hope not. I pray not. But it looks like it could happen. I mean, we might see the seasons come all in one day. I mean, you got winter, heavy rain, severe weather. That'll be interesting to see how it goes. So I'll be really curious to see how Wednesday looks from a weather perspective. I mean, I always hear meteorologists say to me, respect the polygon. I always hear that. I always hear meteorologists always say that to me. Respect the polygon. Even if you're in a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning, or a winter storm warning or an ice storm warning, or a winter weather advisory. Even in severe weather situations, respect the polygon. And what does that do with high school sports? A lot. Because that determines if you play or not. So that's why I always ask, you look at the weather conditions every day. You look at the weather, and I always ask every athlete, I always ask everybody in OAA Nation, why did I ask a weather topic today? Because I'll tell you what right now, when you get to spring, when you get to fall, you're going to have to deal with being outside. You're going to have to deal with the elements. You got to deal with Mother Nature. And that's going to be the challenge going forward. Is how do you adapt to Mother Nature? That's my message to everybody in OAA Nation. Is how do you adapt to Mother Nature? So we'll see what happens. So when I look at other sports here, and I look at, obviously, you look at, of course, our main story here, obviously, with what happened today. There's going to be very interesting. Actually, the OAA enrollment sheet just came out. The enrollment sheet came out. Troy, of course, led the OAA with 22,885. Lake Orion second with 2140. Clarkson was third with 2114. Troy Athens fourth, 1946. Rochester 1765. Oxford was 1717. West Bloomfield 1708. Stony Creek 1686. Bloomfield Hills 1830. That rounds out the top 10. So you look at the teams up in Division 1 for Class A. Lake Orion, Oxford. I mean, that's almost everybody in the OAA is in Division 1 for next year. Division 2, it's Pontiac, Harper Woods, Ferndale U. Of course, in football, obviously, you look at in Division 1, obviously, you got Lake Orion, Clarkson, Oxford, Troy Athens, Rochester, Stony Creek, Adams, Farmington, West Bloomfield. Bloomfield Hills likely going to be Division 1. Division 2, Royal Oak, A&T Grove, Seaholm, Berkeley, North Farmington, Waterford, Vermont, Oak Park, and Ferndale are going to be D2. D3 is Waterford, Kettering, and Avondale. D4, Pontiac, and Harper Woods. So if you want to look at the enrollment sheet, I do have it on my blog at Sagamay4650 at blogspot.com. Now, the reason why I use the enrollment sheet is very important here is because you look at the enrollment sheet, that kind of tells you what division you're going to be come postseason time. And that's what the MHA looks at when it comes to postseason, is the enrollment sheet. They look at, okay, what division you're going to be in. And it goes for all sports. I mean, and I think it's interesting to see, obviously, you look at Ferndale University, both those schools are co-op. I mean, in football, they're co-op programs. So, really, that's going to be the case if they're in Class B, but when they merge together, they use the combined school. They use the combined numbers. They combine everything. So that's the difference with the co-op program with football. So that's really the case here. So for Ferndale and Ferndale U, for football, the reason why they're in D2 for playoffs is because the co-op program is there. Ferndale and Ferndale U. I'm very curious to see, when football does release the official divisions, even though I still think that's going to be the most likely point where I think, for the football divisions are going to be deciding divisions 1 through 8. Now, in the classes, obviously you look at the Catholic League teams, they usually will co-op. Oak Park, we'll actually go up. I know Birmingham Marion likes to go up D1. Orchard Lake St. Mary's is going to be D1. Despite low enrollment, schools do want to go up, and and I don't blame them for that. I really don't blame them for that. They feel like they can compete with the higher level teams. That's fine. Go for it. So it's interesting to see how, when you look at the enrollment sheet that was released during spring break, that the numbers were there, that they released, the MSU released them. And just some of the things that are really interesting when you look at the league, especially when you look at the league next year, when you look at 25 schools, it's going to be back to 23 in 2 years after Farmington and North Farmington leave the OAA for the Lakes Valley Conference. So it'll be interesting to see how things go. So the enrollment sheet's out. It's on my blog at Sagamay4650 at blogspot.com. Want to take a look at it? I do have a link on there to go to the MHA website. So we'll see what happens going forward. Everybody to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog at Sagamay4650 at blogspot.com for the latest information around the OAA. We'll keep an eye on the football situation at Oxford. We're also keeping an eye on everything going around the league. So we'll see what happens going forward. Everybody signing off here. Take care. God bless. And I will see you all next week. Everybody take care. God bless. And see you all next week. God bless all.